Hello, and welcome to Amateur Philosophers Play Games. I'm Noah, your host.
And I'm Justin, the gamer.
And this is the show where we play video games and discuss philosophical ideas, problems, and philosophize about random topics. So, Justin, the author is dead. We can interpret anything any way we want. Great news, isn't it? So, as it turns out, Breath of the Wild is not about Link traveling across Hyrule to save Ganon. It's actually a complex metaphor for metaphor itself. This podcast or YouTube channel, it's not a YouTube channel or a podcast. It is, in fact, a book. And nothing means anything. Isn't that a great?
I think. Are you okay? Are you having a stroke? I think you're having a stroke, Noah.
I think I regularly have a stroke for a week. I just sort of black out and then I wake up a few hours later and somehow I've uploaded something to YouTube where I talk for a while. I don't know what's going on. But while I'm here, might as well talk about it now. So after that bit of a hectic...
Let's hear some reasoning for this crazy...
Yeah, let's. I'll explain it a little more sanely. Let's say. So, this is as the audience you may or may not know if you follow us. I, Noah, happen to be something of a fan of aesthetics. Like I'm always interested in what makes, specifically in terms of art, specifically in terms of stories, because that's what I'm interested in. What makes a story good? What does it mean? How can we interpret it? Is there an interpretation to have? All that fun stuff. So, The Death of the Author is it was actually an essay written by, let me pull up, written back a few years ago in philosophy terms. It is...
I think it was relatively recently, considering, like, in philosophy terms. Like,
pretty this is, like, in terms of philosophy. It was written in mid-20th century literary criticism by a fellow named... Roland Barthes. I don't really know of anything else. He's
French.
Yeah, he's French. I don't really know of anything else he's done. I'm not sure if there's anything particularly notable. But in this essay, Mr. Barthes argues that in traditional literary practice, when you're trying to interpret a book, say, think back to those traumatic memories of high school English class. When you're trying to interpret a book, traditionally, you go by the interpretations of what the author was intending to write. So you essentially try to get in the author's head, as it were. The death of the author concept turns that on its head. It says the author is, well, dead, metaphorically. Once the work has been finished and completed, it is separate from the author, and the author's intentions are not the ultimate meaning and the ultimate explanations of what any given work means. So this is an interesting thought, if I write... Basically, the idea is if I write a book and I say it has a certain meaning, or does what I say have any weight? Or how much weight does it have, I suppose we could say.
Yes.
So let's discuss while you cross this bridge.
So, I think this has some interesting implications, either way you interpret it. Part of me agrees, part of me says that, once the author publishes whatever it is they want out into the world, it is the world's job to interpret the work, and it's whatever I want it to be. I get that. It makes sense to me a little bit, but I feel like that it kind of diminishes the effort of the author. If I want to have something mean something, then I feel like you should take that into consideration when interpreting the work. It could almost be like ignoring context. So like especially if you think about different cultures, if you look at a work from a culture and it's depicted something, I don't know, in a way that you wouldn't think it should. Oh no, in a way you think it shouldn't be depicted.
Oh.
Is that? Who is that, like a fault on the author of the work? It shouldn't seem so, because oh wow, I died. It shouldn't seem so, because how could they know that you would interpret it that way, being from a different culture?
Right.
Like it seems like no, you have to take the author's intent and say, well, they're in this culture, this is what they do here, this would make sense to them. I think in the same way, when an author does something,
I understand that argument, and I think that is. Yeah, I understand that argument, and I think there are arguments for both halves of it, because that is true. But then again, let me offer an illustration of it. is it possible for a work to mean something that the author didn't intend it to? I think is an interesting way of looking at this. So, for example, if I write, let me try to come up with a simple yet obvious example. Trying to come up with one that won't get us demonetized. That's the trick.
That's, you know what? I was actually having the same issue, sir. Because there are definitely examples.
There are not particularly ones I want to talk about publicly on the internet, but you know. Well, let's not make this harder than it is. Let's just say I write something and. All right, let's be crazy here. I write a book that is wildly popular, and I write a book that is wildly popular, and it is read by millions and millions of people worldwide who all love it. I know this is one of the more wilder thought experiments we've had so far, but you know. So I write a book that is wildly popular, millions and millions of people read it, and then draw their opinions on it, as one does when you read a book. And let's say, for the sake of the example, I, as the author, I'm very reclusive. I don't give interviews. I don't talk about my work. In fact, I wrote it under a pen name. Nobody really knows who the author is, but the book is still popular. And there is one particular point in the book that the common consensus, let's say if 10 million people wrote it, 9,700,000 people out of them all agree on this, that this one point means A. Let's say it's a reference to the Cold War. Sure, we'll go with the Cold War.
Okay. So
97% of the people out there who've read this book have agreed on that. And yet later on my deathbed as the author, I released a note that said, no, actually, that was a reference to H.G. Wells' The War of the Worlds. You guys are all just wrong. So what do we do here? Is it possible that my intentions were clearly not to reference the Cold War, and yet it seems that I accidentally did so. So is that possible? When you're interpreting literature, can you make that argument? Can you say, oh, well, maybe the author didn't mean for the blue chair to represent that the character is sad, but really that's what it means? It's an interesting question.
Okay, actually, I think that's a great example for this. I think a good way to put this would be, can you use a hammer for purposes other than a hammer? Or actually, no, sorry, there's a better example. What is a doorstop?
Okay. Are you looking... so there's two ways of answering this question. I think I see where you're getting at, so I'll answer them both ways. The first way is a doorstop is a object that stops a door from, usually from closing.
Right.
We'll say from closing. The second answer is a doorstop is one of those little rubber triangular things that you slide on the ground, and it slides under the crack in the door and prevents the door from shutting.
Right. The second example is like what a doorstop is. Like if you look up a doorstop, that's what you find. However, if I put a book in front of a door, is the book now not a doorstop? It seems as though it is functioning as a doorstop.
Okay.
And so the answer is... Oof, almost got hit. The answer is a doorstop is whatever functions as a doorstop. So I think that even though a book is not intended to be a doorstop, it can be one. In the same way, I think that just because you didn't intend for it to be a reference to the Cold War doesn't mean it cannot be used as a reference to the Cold War. And I think that you aren't, I guess, entitled to be solely responsible for saying, no, it cannot be that. Like, no, you can't interpret it as the Cold War. You're wrong. Because as long as it functions and works correctly, I think that, no, you especially because you, in this scenario, you aren't making your intentions clear as to what you want the work to be used as. You're just being a recluse and then, like, upset that people got, like, something wrong. It's like, well, you kind of didn't help anybody. Oh, what is this thing? Oh, I don't like this thing.
You might want to, rather than charging and blind me, you might want to consider, like, using a bow and arrow.
Yeah, this stuck. I didn't realize what it was at first, and so I was just gonna hit it real quick and then run away. But now I'm realizing, no, we need to run. Now is the time to run. What? Didn't I kill this thing? I thought I killed it.
Yes, that little dancing thing in the... Yeah, those guys are annoying.
What if I could not miss?
They also dodge pretty well, so we'll do that.
Okay, so yes, that's what I think. I think that you, like for instance, I think a good example. Oh, I can't believe I'm going to talk about this after all these years. When I was in high school, we read a poem.
Okay.
We read a poem about the British occupation of India, and there was something about an elephant being sick, and then like the British like military guy had to shoot the elephant. And all of us in the class managed to interpret the poem in a way to where the elephant represented nothing. Like we found a perfectly good, like viable interpretation that
So, for clarity, the elephant didn't represent anything. It was a literal elephant who happened to have a disease, and this person walked over and killed the elephant with a literal gun.
I think the way it was is that the elephant had gone on a rampage and was destroying the town, but elephants were sacred, and so the British like officer was conflicted on what he should do. But he was like, eventually he said, I have to shoot the elephant. And so
it was a literal elephant, like
it was a literal
animal
elephant
with a trunk and tusks. Okay.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
Yeah, so it was a literal elephant, and he had to shoot the elephant, and then he was like conflicted about it, and we all interpreted it saying, the elephant represents nothing. Like there is no deeper meaning. It's just an elephant. And we did and we got more or less the same conclusion that like we were led to like that she was leading us to believe, but we did it without the need of the elephant being real. And then after like a few minutes of her like asking repeatedly, what does the elephant represent, and us saying nothing, she was like, no, it represents like India or something, it represented the British occupation of India.
Okay.
Because like it was causing more damage, and like the officer was conflicted whether or not to be there, and like yada yada yada. And so I think it's the same thing. I think like no, we came to a conclusion that didn't require the elephant to represent the British occupation, and we got basically the same answer as to why he was conflicted, why there was an issue. So I don't see like the author's intent of the elephant being something as relevant to the discussion.
Right. And let's say, I don't know if, I'm not familiar with the poem you're talking about, but let's say for the sake of the argument, your teacher knows that the elephant is supposed to represent British occupation because the author of the poem talked about it in an interview or something. I don't know. But basically,
yeah.
let's assume for the sake of the thought experiment that your teacher has a line to the author of the poem.
Yes.
Yeah. So complicating matters is in literature, especially in poetry, but it can happen in literature too. Things can have both a literal and a symbolic meaning at the same time. So in your poem, it's possible that the elephant was a literal elephant in the literal sense, but it was also the British occupation of India in the symbolic sense. And those two things can happen at the same time and coexist. So this is where it starts to get really muddy if it weren't before, because I just did think, let me take a side minute to say, in theory, a good author should be able to intend to make a point, and that's the point that comes across to the audience. And that's the ideal scenario. Everyone's happy then. But there will always be scenarios where perhaps the author didn't have enough coffee that day and wrote the sentence in a funny way that implied something completely opposite, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I tend to agree. I tend to agree with the idea of the death of the author, that basically what it's really saying is the work stands apart from the artist or from the creator. So a book stands separate from the one who wrote it. A painting stands separate from the painter, so on and so forth.
Okay.
And in that sense, yes, it's like it's a separate entity almost. Like if I and my fingers, my fingers, let's say, are a part of me. So if I make a rude gesture at you and you get angry at me for it, I can't say, oh, it wasn't me, it was just my fingers. No, my fingers are a part of me, right? They're
right.
Considered my entity. But if I have a book and the book makes you mad, is it more valid to say that's not me, bro? That's the book. That's the work. It's separate from me. Is that a valid thing to do? Because if we're taking this idea that the work is separate from the worker, you theoretically could do that, but should you? Could you? Because you can very see how this would lead to an excuses where I can write a really nasty treatise accusing everyone and everything I don't like, setting myself up as a great person, and then say, oh no, I don't really think that. That's just, you're just interpreting it that way. And that seems incorrect.
I agree. Okay, so sorry, I'm trying to read this too because
yeah, of course.
Usually I miss a lot. Usually I miss a lot of the lore for this game.
Yes,
because I'm trying to talk over it.
You missed the lore for the game because we're talking about the lore of real life. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. I did a lot of reading. I really thought it was going to be like a speak friend and enter kind of moment where I would get to like go somewhere, but. All right. I don't know where to go.
Wait, could you not go through the door?
It didn't open.
Let me go back to it. I wasn't reading it too closely either. Sorry, I was too busy monologuing.
So yeah, history.
Oh, is it not? Maybe it's not a. Is it a door even? It might just be a carving on the wall.
I think it's just a carving on the wall. It's just the writing on the wall, Noah. This is great.
Great.
And it doesn't help that it's like raining, so I can't see that well. Like I feel like I'm supposed to follow a path, but I keep like randomly going off the path. Like I feel like this was like a side quest that I just did.
Possibly. Maybe like follow those little. Like that was a little light post you just walked by a minute ago. Maybe you follow those. It goes up. So like you seem to be on a path up the hill right now, right?
Yeah. I was thinking I came down. That's why I didn't follow it this way. But I think maybe I'm wrong.
No.
Oh, here we go. There's something.
Yeah.
Let's go up.
You're climbing.
Okay.
Anyway.
So. Sorry. The last thing you said was all right. Fingers and then can I use it as an excuse?
Yes.
I feel like okay. So the reason the finger one is doesn't work is because you have control over you have like direct control over like what happens to your fingers most of the time.
Yeah.
Like barring medical issues. You can decide whether or not you're going to make a gesture and you know what that gesture means. Like I think that's the thing. If you know how it will be interpreted, then you bear more responsibility.
You have culpability. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right, so that makes sense for that. Yeah.
So, but if you write a book. So if you wrote a book saying, "Oh, I hate this particular group of people. They are the problems for all of our country, and we should, hunt them down and put them in gas chambers," I think that no, you knew how people would interpret that, and that that your journey is not one of sorrow. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. I agree.
Like that.
I agree.
I think that
that result makes a lot of sense. I'm just trying to reverse engineer. So how is it that we start at one place with the death of the author, we end here at no, you still are culpable for the things you've written. How do we make that connection, or does that mean that our assumptions are incorrect? That's what I'm trying to backlog here.
Right,
that makes sense.
and I think I'm trying to figure out how good to explain. I think we are talking about two different categories of like works without realizing it, and that if we find the distinction, it would be a lot easier. Let me snipe this guy.
What do you mean by two different types of works?
Nope, that's not how you snipe him. So, like, there is something different about, for instance, knowing what you're going to write and know how it's going to be interpreted versus, it just being interpreted that way, and that was like your intention for it to be that way. So there's a difference between saying, I hate this group of people, let's go kill them, and, I had Gatsby chase a green light, and now you're interpreting the green light to be like the American dream. But I intended it to be waffles.
So what you're saying is the author's intent is important. And so, for example, the author... But, of course, it's hard to determine intent of another person, but we'll leave that aside for now because, like, for example, I know our court system is very important. Intent is very important. If you hit a person with a car, if it's an accident, it's a lower charge than if it's on purpose. But how can you really know that? Yeah. But yes, I see your point. So it sounds like the intent of the author is important in that case, right? Like if my intention was, okay, well, let's try, let's try and do this then.
No, maybe it's not intention. It's knowledge of how it will be received.
Oh, okay.
So, for instance, you could write satire saying, "Oh, I hate this person, and we should kill them."
I hate all street sweepers because the beautiful dirt of the street collects up and then they mess it all up, and that's the problem with the country.
Yeah, or what is it? I think we talked a lot about this freshman year, college. What was it? A modest solution to hunger, or a modest solution.
A modest solution.
Yeah.
Just eat people. It's easy.
Yeah. We're having trouble feeding people. We'll just eat babies. It's so easy. Why is this hard? It's like that.
Yeah, that's satire. Which
he knew when he wrote it that it would be received as satire. So if people started doing it, it's like, well, okay, clearly it's satire, and you are misinterpreting the work now.
Right.
So it depends on how you. So am I supposed to go down to that? I was just on that bridge, though. I crossed it to get here. No, I didn't.
Yeah, you did.
Different bridge.
Wait, is it really? No, you definitely. Crossed
I think it has to be.
You crossed a big fancy bridge. I don't know which
but
side.
Like
you came from.
I don't remember there being like a citadel on the other end, though. Like that looks like stuff.
Oh, okay. Oh, you're
so
right.
I think.
So you can probably like paraglide down there if you want.
Oh yeah, I forget I can do that.
I know, it's like the most fun part of this game, honestly.
Now I can like drop right and then like.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. No, honestly, Breath of the Wild would like not be nearly as fun if you couldn't fly, or paraglide at least. It would make the game much less wide open. Anyway. Yeah. Oh, okay. So. I agree with what you're saying with the satire. Okay. Oh, sorry. I wanted to get my thoughts down. I agree with what you say with the satire. That makes sense. But that seems to imply that there is a correct meaning of the work. So in the a modest solution, the correct meaning is that it's satire, or it's satirizing. I actually don't remember what he was trying to satirize at the time. Whatever.
I think it was just the fact that the government was being stupid about its economy and was like making poor people suffer.
Was it like? I think it might have had to do with the British government's how they were dealing with Ireland, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it might have been that. Anyway, that is the correct interpretation of it, and it's possible to misinterpret it. It's always possible to misinterpret things. Look at this fish man.
Yeah. Am I going to beat him like we beat the other fish people in D&D?
No, don't. He's talking to you. He's talking to you. That means he's not evil. That's how games work usually. But so that's fine. But now we have to come to the question of how do we find the correct meaning of a work? And I think that is where again we run into the death of the author. Is the correct meaning created by the author, or is it independent and sort of created by the work itself?
I think the idea is that the author gives the framework by which to interpret the work. So for instance, if I am writing a satire piece, you cannot interpret the work outside of satire. However, if for instance somewhere in, I don't know, the modest solution, you find a correlation of words or of like phrases that give you a deeper meaning.
Sorry, real quick. If you go around, I think there's a shrine back here, which is nice because it's a shrine, but also it lets you fast travel back here whenever you want.
This is true. I was going to do it. I just thought maybe I had to talk to this person first in order to do it.
Side quests? No, we don't do those around here.
No, we're here for the mains. What's this? Mushrooms? Anyway, so I think that the author sets the framework or the mode by which to interpret the work, but that ultimately, so as long as you are interpreting the work under that context, the author can't tell you that you're wrong. Like they could have, like I said, like they could have like an original like meaning that they wanted it to be. However, as long as like you operate within the rules of satire and you come up with like a new interesting meaning, well then okay. The author can't say no, that's wrong. It's like no, it's operating within the rules of basically. It's kind of like when you like in D&D, when you create a world and then like you give a set of rules on how spells operate, and then a player finds a unique way to use your rules against the DM, it's like you can't say, "Oh no, in this case, no." It's like, no, but why? Like, really, these are the rules, and these are the way the world works, and I'm operating within those rules. Don't worry, no, I definitely won't use this against you in a game.
Yeah, I think I understand where you're going for. Then, so if the author can't, let's say we're both operating within the framework, the author can't tell you you're wrong. Can your peers tell you that you're wrong? So let's say, Justin, you and I are analyzing the same work and we come to opposite interpretations. If I say it's a, sure, okay, let's say go back to your elephant poem. Let's say you come to the conclusion, no, the elephant only it's just an elephant, bro. It doesn't have any deeper meaning. And I come to the conclusion, no, actually the elephant is representative of hunger. And we clearly have different interpretations. So the author isn't allowed to tell either one of us that we're right, but are we allowed to tell each other that the other one is wrong?
No. And it's for a similar reason as to why like art is interpretive. It's like, no, as long as I feel, oh no.
Oh no.
Apparently I didn't stop enough time. Oh, I could use the ice. I can use ice.
I think what you're trying to do here, maybe are you just trying to dodge them and like look across the way? Is the gate thing on the other side of it? Yeah, look, I just have to get across.
Oh, but I thought I had to put a ball in this whole thing.
Oh, you probably do. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try freezing some of the water to like stop some of it from coming down. Anyway, so
you were saying art is interpretive, right?
Yeah, there is something about art that seems like you get a certain, each person who views it has the right to say what it means to them. Okay. And that seems fair, I think. I mean,
sure, but can you say that's what it means, period? Because according to, going back to our old favorite, the law of non-contradiction, if I say okay, let's get even more extreme. You say the elephant represents an elephant. I say the elephant represents a non-elephant. Clearly, it can't be both at the same time, or can it?
That would only work if you believe that there is an objective meaning behind the poem.
Ah, there's the question. So I think then we need to answer that question. Is there an objective meaning behind a poem or a book or any other piece of art?
I would say I am inclined to believe that apart from scriptures, no, there is no objective meaning, because once again, I can use your world, like the rules of your world, to come up with a crazy conclusion that you didn't think about, and it's not invalid just because you don't like it.
So art has no objective meaning. Well, that's a fun thought. That's a fun thought for all you artists out there who try to change the world with beauty and whatever else good you can say about art. I'm not convinced about that. I tend to have the assumption or come to the conclusion that any given piece of art, any book or whatever, does have an objective meaning. Whether or not we know what it is or it's easy to find is different. And it's of course possible to come up with incorrect interpretations, but I'm of the assumption that, or not assumption, I'm of the opinion that I'm gonna set let's clarify, let's set aside scriptures for now, because that operates under a whole different set of rules. We're talking about entirely human pieces of art, right?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clear that up, because then like people would start, I feel like someone in the comments, because we get so many comments on our videos, someone in the comments would talk about how like the Bible,
yes, so
like it would be interpreted like there's an objective meaning. I was like, okay, we're gonna ignore that.
I agree. Yeah, we're set. For the record, we are setting aside scriptures and holy works like that for now. We might come back to that later, but for now we're not. So anyway, I'm of the opinion that, say, any given piece of work of art has an objective meaning. It does have an objective meaning, but what that is, and okay, here we go. The act of interpretation is attempting to get closer to that objective meaning.
Okay, so you think that, for instance, there is an objective meaning behind the meaning of the elephant in the poem.
Right, the meaning of the elephant.
And it
Your
is our job
as
to
analysts
try
to
and
find
understand what that
objective
meaning is.
Yes, and now I will say, of course, if it's a very short poem, like if it's a 3-line poem, of course it's going to be difficult to come to any real conclusions because you don't have much evidence. But the point still stands that, and also if it's a poorly written work, it can be harder to find the objective meaning, or perhaps the objective meaning isn't what the author expected it to be. But the point is, there is.
So I can write a poem and not know what it means.
That is the implications of the death of the author theory. Yes, you can you can create a piece of art and you can create a piece of art and expect it to mean one thing, but it in fact the true objective meaning is something completely different because the way you worded it didn't come out how you wanted. Now I think it's also possible to, if you're a good author or perhaps just lucky, I don't really know, to intend to write it to mean something and it does mean that. But it's not guaranteed. That makes sense.
Interesting. So you see, I was always taking this to mean that, like, I always had the idea that it's whether or not. Man, do I ever get to expand my inventory? I'm leaving behind a lot of cool weapons, like just laying around.
I will say, you know those little Korok seeds, like when you see the little guys that say "Yahaha, you found me."
Yeah.
I think if you collect enough of those and then you talk to a big green guy with maracas, he expands your inventory for you.
Okay, well that'll be fun to try and find then. Okay, so wait, I don't get it.
Don't
I put
really
a ball
know.
in the hole. Nothing happens.
This is going to embarrass anyone who's played it. I played through the entire game of Breath of the Wild without realizing you could expand the inventory, and it was only looking up afterward what the Korok seeds did that I figured out that's what they do. So I don't actually know where to go to talk to this big green man, but it's probably around somewhere.
So right now, is that's like the button that stops it from?
Wait, didn't you put it?
There's no rocks.
Did you not put the ball in already?
I put the ball in.
Oh, then
happened.
Can you go down to the? Yeah, can't you just go and get your skull gem or whatever it's called? Oh, weird. Is there?
So apparently I did something wrong.
Is there another hole you need to put it in?
That's why I went up to the top, and there's an. Oh wait. Okay, so there's a big orange like ball up there. I don't know if I need to get.
Oh, I bet you need to get the orange ball in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But then, like, I was like, how do I get up there? But now I realize that I could probably walk around on this platform and then, like, hit it or something.
Yeah, or maybe, like,
maybe
carry it or something.
Yeah, because I'm worried. Yeah, I probably have to do it that way. Because
or I bet you could, like, perhaps create ice down at the bottom, knock it down and in the correct way so it falls on the ice, and then grab it from the bottom.
Yeah. It's like, I can't, like, get up there.
Can you create ice on the wall and then, or on the water and climb up that?
Maybe. Let's see. Anyway, so death of the author. So I always interpreted this to mean that. Oh no! Did not realize there was a gap there. I always interpreted it to mean that, like, whether or not the author, because I always thought the art was subjective, and so the question wasn't, oh, what, like, does the author have the ultimate meaning? It was just, does the author's intent have an input on how you should interpret the work?
Well,
not.
I think
this is the only way to
interesting
interpret the
questions. Both are interesting questions to ask, but fundamentally, if we want to answer it, we do have to decide: does art have an objective meaning, or is it fully subjective? Because I think either way, we can come to different implications about what the death of the author concept. We're kind of acting on the assumption it's true, which I think we say it at least partially is, but whatever that means, we can try to come up with that. But I think we do need to decide if. Okay. Oh, this sounds like an easy task to do in the next 5 minutes or so. Does art have objective meaning? Let's discuss.
Okay, does art have an objective meaning? What would that even look like? Like, what does that mean? It has an objective meaning.
Well, that's what I was saying about, or it's what I was saying earlier, that there is only one.
I could just push it.
Oh, very clever. Oh, 'cause that's water. Hey, smart.
All right, we are on
that's what I was saying earlier about there would only be one correct way to interpret any given piece of art, and that would be to find the meaning. Whereas subjectively, you would say, well, there could be any number of ways to interpret a piece of art because there is no correct one. I guess it's like saying if art is objective, there's a standard, and it's almost like a Platonic ideal of meaning that you're trying to reach,
right,
whereas if it's subjective, there's not, and you're just doing your own thing. Does that make sense? I don't think that makes much sense.
Okay, say it again with a little more clarity. So say it like this.
Okay.
Oh no, that's bad.
That's a laser, Justin. Don't. Yeah.
I thought I walked through it before,
If
so
you
I was
block
like,
it,
it'll be fine.
I think if you block it, you can move through it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna eat some food real quick.
All right.
Apparently, I'm
So-
gonna die.
Try to say it with more clarity. Let me say, all right, you know how in mathematics there is always one correct answer, right? If you have a question of what is the square root of 9, there is one correct answer, and any calculations, any form of math you do is attempting to reach that correct answer, right?
Okay, I have a counter to that, but I'll allow it for now.
Yeah. I'm saying you just apply it's a similar concept for art. Now, except it's infinitely more complicated because it's much harder to demonstrate if you've reached the correct answer or not. With mathematics, it's easy to demonstrate what is the square root of 9? 3. How can you demonstrate that? You can multiply 3 by 3 and you get 9. You can, I think there's actually a long way to find the square root of a number. I don't remember it off the top of my head. You can do that. There are multiple ways to demonstrate that you found the correct answer. With art, it's a lot harder. I'm not even sure if it is possible, but the same principle applies. That's how I have seen it up till now, at least.
Sweet. All right, so I would say that is it like math? Okay, so here, I don't know how you'll take this counter example, but I'm gonna counter your idea that math is subjective in the way that you have implied. It is in no way like that. For instance, you say, what's the square root of 9? I say it is 2 plus 1. Is that the same thing as 3? I mean, yes, it has the same value, but is it 3? No, it's not 3.
Yes, it is.
Is it 3? I think that the answer to that solution is 3. I do not believe that 2 plus 1 is the number 3.
Any mathematicians in the any mathematical philosophers in the comments, leave a comment about, is 2 plus 1 equal to 3? Yes or no?
No, I'm not saying it's equal to. I'm saying it's the same thing as 3.
So
and I feel like it's not.
I think we're arguing. Oh boy, we're arguing semantics again. Is the same thing the same thing as equal, or I suppose is the same thing equal to equal? This is hard to define. This is hard to come up with.
I mean, granted, I could just, it's totally also entirely possible that I'm just, I am just playing semantics, but I'm trying to. That's not my intent here. Is not to try and like.
No, I understand. I think that is a very valid question to ask. I think. Is the same are the same thing and equal interchangeable in mathematics? Gotta hit it a little harder, I think.
Okay, well, last time I hit it, I ended up like, oh, whoops, hold on. I canceled, yeah. Okay. Last time I did it, I think I like was in the way of something, and then like it hit me.
Oh, well, don't stand in the way that it's gonna fly.
Okay. Yay, physics. Alright, so... yeah, I think that there is some slight difference. And the question is, can I knock it in a way... I'm not going to have time to switch, am I?
I think okay, here... Do you want my idea on how to do this?
Yeah.
Okay, so what you're going to need to do is destroy the ice, and then as it... move to the left a little bit, like below where the ice is. Destroy the ice, and then as the ball falls down, freeze it, and then use that freezing to knock it in the direction you want it to go. You'll have to be like pretty quick on the trigger finger.
Alright, let me make sure I remember how to... okay, it's up. Okay, so... scatter, up, stasis... Nope! What? I thought I freezed it. No!
You didn't lock onto it.
Okay, well...
I mean, there might be another way to do it, like if you can direct it in the... or like... maybe instead of like freezing it right down at the bottom, if you freeze it a little farther up the waterfall or the slide or whatever this is, you'll have more...
I feel like I was just too close, and so I went to go spin towards it. I ended up moving.
Yeah. I think that idea should work. It's just execution.
Now it's just a matter of doing it.
Yeah.
All right, so, sorry, the last thing we said was, or was the last thing asking the mathematicians?
Yeah. Yeah. I think math in particular is unique because you can always, at any time when performing mathematics, simplify or, I suppose, complexify an equation. So, like, you can always, at any time, if you have the statement 3 times 3 equals 9, you can always simplify the left side to get 9 equals 9. You can always deconstruct one of them to say 9 equals 2 plus 7. So, math, it's a little hard to say that, but... Yeah, I use that as an illustration to make my point. So I think let's say math. I don't know. Can we set aside math for now? Because I didn't intend to talk about math in this very literary analysis style.
Oh no,
question.
Noah, the math nerd, disturbed by the math.
Hey now, I'm both a math nerd and a book nerd. It's a strange combination, but it's how we gotta do things. Yeah, so like, if you freeze it,
back up,
right, and no, you missed.
I hit it.
You didn't press A when it was like when it turned green. I think.
All right, we got this. I know what to do now, so now it's just a matter of doing it.
Wait, so it's now just a question of doing it, right? So, but can we?
All right, so math. Does it? Do you want to stick to literature? So, like, or like other forms of art?
I would, in theory, be interested in pursuing this question in math, but I'm not really sure how we can even answer that. Like, is equal same as the same in mathematics? I don't
have the proper math knowledge to be able to like explain what I'm thinking, but I'm imagining that there's probably a scenario in which if you had looked at an equation as not 9, but rather 2 plus 7, you would see something that you didn't see before because you were assuming 9 when really you could have done something with the 7. I don't know. I don't know how math works.
I mean, all right. So I think I see what you're saying. In theory, yes, there could be a... okay. I think I see what you're saying. So in mathematics, a lot of times there are multiple ways to find the same answer, right? This is, especially for more complex equations. In theory, if you broke apart the 9 into 2 plus 7, you might see a different solution that would be easier for your human brain to understand. But either way, you will still come to the same solution. So the path is different, but the answer is the same. And for that reason, I don't think it actually makes a difference. It would only make a difference on how many minutes of scribbling on paper it takes you to get there. You'll still end up at the same place, in theory, if you do everything right.
Okay, so, this is also me, once again, not knowing anything about math. Could it be that you find not, like, a new answer, but, like, I don't know, you discover the equivalent of discovering calculus because you looked at it differently?
That's unlikely. I mean...
It's unlikely, but, like, is that, like, I don't know, like, is that something you can do in math, like, where you... Oh, nope. This is a wash. It's gonna go down. It's gonna hit there. Oh, I guess I could freeze it, couldn't I? Get close enough.
Wait a minute. Oh, you didn't even... Hold on. It's just... Oh, yeah. Quick, just hit it toward the hole.
I don't like playing golf. All right, we did it.
Now just just put it in very gently.
I know this is exactly what this feels like. It's like, can I roll it? No,
I don't think so. No.
Okay, just gotta give a little love tap. Okay, let's see how far that goes.
Yeah. All right. And we can sit here awkwardly for a few seconds for it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Satisfying.
That little do music is so satisfying. You get it.
Yes. We gotta remember, I don't hear that. I still don't have audio.
Yeah. Well, audience, you can.
But anyway. So if there is some value in like, and obviously we're using like addition and subtraction, which is a really oversimplifying this process, but like if there is some way in which math where like you are, instead of having the complex version or having the simplified version of something, you have the complex version laid out in front of you, you see a pattern, or you see, I don't know, some like unique way to solve a formula. Well, I guess that would be the same thing. But then you would create like a whole new. You would see something that wasn't already well. I was gonna say you see something that wasn't already there, but I guess the math was there. You just discovered it.
That's my point. Like again,
because you might
find a new path to the answer, but you won't get a new answer.
Okay, so this is what I say then. The difference is you do not discover literary interpretation or art interpretation. You invent art. You do not invent math. Newton didn't invent physics or didn't invent calculus. He just discovered it.
Right. Whereas
so
you're saying
the question is that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you're saying Newton didn't invent calculus; he discovered it. But for example, who wrote
F. Scott Fitzgerald?
Who wrote Great Gatsby? Whatever.
F. Scott Fitzgerald.
Yeah, F. Scott Fitzgerald did invent The Great Gatsby, which that's a fair point. I think that is.
I mean, unless you're a determinist.
Shout out to all the determinists in the audience again. We mentioned you. Now we're not going to mention you again because I don't think that's particularly relevant to this discussion. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
No, but I thought it was funny drop.
That is a good point. The way I'm looking at it is once The Great Gatsby has been invented, it is now an independent entity, and it is an independent entity, and it is unchanged by the perspective of the viewer. So,
wait, it's unchanged by the perspective of the viewer?
Correct.
Okay.
Like, well, yeah. That's another thing. That the reason I come to this conclusion is because it doesn't matter how many people interpret it or assuming you're like not changing the text, which we're assuming you're not, but
yeah.
How many people interpret it or how many people read it, The Great Gatsby will still be the same. Identical to what it was when it first came off the pen of F. Scott Fitzgerald, that's why I feel safe making the conclusion. No, it is its own entity that has its own objectiveness, because if it didn't, then it would be influenced by the outside. It's almost like every book becomes its own little universe, and if that isn't a cringy line, I don't know what is. That seems like something you would see at a library on a poster in a kids section at the library. Every book is its own little universe.
Yeah. Okay, so wait. Then hold on, let me read this. I'm gonna go for I've been sleeping. That's just to be funny. I don't think it changes the actual dialogue, or like outcome, but it's funny.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think doesn't ring a bell. But I like how I'm just trolling him right now. This is great. Anyway, so all right. If we're gonna go by that logic, let's take that corny line. I'm gonna put it to the coals.
Ooh, let's do it.
So you create a universe, right? You got a little book here with a little universe in it. I argue. So you're arguing that each interpretation of that book after the fact is like Newton discovering calculus. It's the laws of the universe already.
Calculus, and now I'm saying there will be several interpretations that will be incorrect. There'll be several attempts at calculus that don't actually work, but that is what you are effectively trying to do. Yes, discover the core of the universe, if that makes any sense.
Okay. All right. I think we're. You know what? Get excited, people. We might actually come to a conclusion on this episode.
That can't be.
So then. Okay. So wait. So let's see. I'm reading The Great Gatsby. I come to a conclusion that the American dream is the green light. Now the question is, there are a few questions. One, did F. Scott Fitzgerald know that was the interpretation?
Did he know that was the interpretation you were going to make?
Does he know that is the correct interpretation?
Okay, so
hold
on. Are we making the assumption that is the correct interpretation? Like in this universe?
Okay. Let's assume yes.
Right.
Yes.
We'll assume that the green light is the American dream. All right.
Okay.
Did F. Scott Fitzgerald know that was true? Honestly, man, I don't know about you. I don't have the ability to read the mind of a man who's been dead for years. So I don't know. And that's the difficulty with trying to come up.
The question here is, because like what I'm getting at here is like, if he had written it once again, with the intention of it being like the American dream, then he would know it. If he didn't intend it, then he wouldn't know it.
Right. And I'm saying I don't know which of those is the case, but my argument is it doesn't matter, because whether or not he intended it, the green light is the American dream in our assumption.
Right. So what makes it the American dream in our assumption, other than the fact that we're assuming it because we have control of the thought?
Yes, we have control. What makes it so? Back my argument, like I was making, the way the universe is, now that The Great Gatsby is its own work and its own entity, separate from, in some ways, separate from the rest of the universe. It follows its own rules, and the rules that are unshakably set in place as soon as it is finished. And one of those rules is the green light is the American dream. Okay,
so now I feel like I see where this logic is coming from, but my question would then be, can you create something stronger than yourself? Like, can a being with creation make something stronger than itself?
What do you mean by stronger?
So, okay, the idea is you cannot have a reactant that has more power than the products. You can't do that. Like, you just have to have, the energy just has to move from one place to another. So if the author cannot create something that defies the rules that he set in motion, or that she set in motion. Sorry. So basically,
hold on.
Like we're saying
Wait, back up. Saying you cannot you cannot create something that defies the rules you've set is not the same as saying you cannot create something stronger than yourself. Those are not equivalent statements. I don't think.
Well, because if you could override the laws or the rules that I set in motion, you have more power.
Okay, well, here's what I'm saying. All right, you're correct, but the author might not know they're setting, or she's setting these rules in place. She might not even be aware of what she's doing in the act of creation. And that's where the death of the author, in my opinion, comes in, because the author isn't aware that she's doing this, but she is still doing it when she's writing this book, or when F. Scott Fitzgerald is putting the last touches on The Great Gatsby. You might not know what he's doing, making the green light the American dream, but he is doing it. And that's why we shouldn't take his opinion as certainty, because he might not know what he did. It's a very sort of metaphysical interpretation of the creative process, I agree, but that is how I've seen it in the past, and that's what makes sense to me. And hey, as philosophers, that's the point of being a philosopher, right? You get to share your crackpot theories with the world, and as long as you look smart doing it, people accept that as possible. Maybe.
Maybe.
Oh, hey. Wait, are you in the right piece now? Oh, no. Oh, you're looking at it, right?
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I wish I was there. I still don't know how to get there. The path is literally not clear.
Like 4 weeks, probably.
It's so hard for me to, find... I want to get there. I know it's not far, but it seems really far, and, I can't find, the road that leads there.
There's not always a road. Sometimes it's you just gotta go over the mountains or go through the wilderness.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, what were you going to say before we got sidetracked?
Because it sounds like you're saying that an author can write a book, make rules within there, like knowing that she's writing these rules. Like, for instance, J.K. Rowling, the way magic works in her universe, a lot of people say makes no sense,
right?
Or it's very poorly written. But it seems like you're saying she can write the rules of how magic works in the universe, but then she could be wrong about how magic works in her universe.
Yes, that is what I'm saying.
All right. So hold on. Would this be because, okay, I think that's what you're saying, because of the way she wrote it, even though she thought, oh, this is the way this will work. If someone who I don't know, if a philosopher looks at it and says, well, okay, let's put it on a logic tree. Oh, look, this doesn't work in the universe. The logic of this makes no sense. And so this is...
You thought it was A, but when we put it on a logic tree, we see that it is in fact B. That's when... Yes, like that.
Okay, hold on.
Okay.
I'm okay with this, and here's why. We did it, people. We have come to a conclusion. I am okay with this, and here's why. Okay, we're gonna get a little spicy. All right, but it's not terribly spicy. I I guess I don't have an option. So, in the First Amendment, was it the First Amendment I'm thinking of?
Free speech.
Yeah, freedom of speech. No,
Yeah.
no. Sorry, no, not that one. In the 1965 Equality Act, Civil
Okay.
Rights Act. Okay, it says that you can't discriminate based on sex, right?
Right.
And then that's just the language that was used, right?
Correct.
Now we have there's obviously we have new laws that are in place, but we're not talking about those. The question that I was asked when I went to ASU for a mock class was, does like sexual discrimination or sexual harassment in the workplace violate that rule in like certain ways? Because like some people would say, well, as long as the rule applies to everybody, then it doesn't. You're not discriminating based on sex. So for instance, if I say, okay, no one in the office can be in a same-sex relationship. No one can be in a same-sex relationship.
Okay.
It's not, and then I'm told, okay, now I'm not discriminating based on sex because the rule applies to both men and women. But it's been argued since then that actually in the original language, despite what the authors originally intended, that, well, if a man is in a relationship with a man and you say you can't do that, but if a woman was in a relationship with that same man, you are discriminating based on the sex of that person. Because if the only thing that changes is the sex of the person, then you are discriminating based on sex. It doesn't matter, that applies to everybody.
Right. I think I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so under that same logic, I would say that yes, the author is dead and their interpretation is relevant.
Right. Yes. I think. I will say
What?
yes
I
with
can
a couple
ascend
of
waterfalls?
yeah.
Dope.
I will say yes with a couple of
Sorry.
qualifications. One, yes, I'm saying what you're saying. Yes, that is correct with a couple of qualifications. One, we've been talking about art, and art and law are not really the same thing. They are related in some ways. Like, I suppose writing a law is a form of making art, but they're not. They're fundamentally, I'd say, different parts of philosophy, right? Aesthetics and morality aren't or aesthetics and ethics, which I feel law falls under ethics, is not really the same. So I'm not entirely certain you can cross the streams like that, but assuming you can, yes. And then number two, I'm not certain that is the correct interpretation. Like, again, what I was saying, it's very possible to have a incorrect interpretation, even though, so it's very possible to have an incorrect interpretation, even though you are trying to interpret it separate from the author. So there could be multiple incorrect interpretations, but based on those two qualifications, yes, that is what I'm saying.
All right. So I feel like we're about to wrap up because I finally
Yeah.
did something of accomplishment, and it's almost an hour.
I agree.
So I will say I'll just respond to the two things. The first one, I agree that yes, obviously I'm not trying to say that making a law and making art are the same. I was merely focusing on the interpretation aspect
Yes.
of it
And
and
yes,
the
for
intent
that part,
behind
yes,
it.
I
So,
agree.
Yes. So I feel like those streams are equivalent. You can cross them. The second one you said was what was your second point?
My second point was just in that specific example, and I suppose any specific example you could give. Remember, just because, so we'll say the original authors of the law intended one thing. We'll call that A. The interpretation you just mentioned, the one where discriminating against same-sex relationships would be discriminating against sex. We'll call that interpretation B. There is no guarantee that either A or B are correct. It could be F that is the correct interpretation. So it's possible that we're both wrong, and we're still not at the correct interpretation of this work, this independent work that is the law. So, but yes, that is in theory, it is possible to get to F. I don't know when we would, or if I don't know if we're there or not, but in theory, it is possible.
Okay, so I'm not quite sure about literature because, like, obviously, by the way you've set it up, there is no way to know the objective truth
That
or
is what
meaning
makes it
of,
hard.
of the art. So I will say,
God knows.
I will say,
I'll put it
yeah,
down.
yeah, God does, but we don't, and there's no way for us to know. So the best that we can do, I would say, is we have to allow whatever interpretation is logically allowed.
Yes.
Has to be true. That's the only way we could operate, is that as long as you can make the argument and it follows through logically within the rules set in the universe, that is the best interpretation that we have.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. If you have two, and I would argue this isn't likely to happen, but I think it could happen. If you have two opposite interpretations that both completely follow all the laws of the universe as it is written, every word, every sentence, both leads to both interpretations equally, then yes, we don't have any way of knowing which of those two is accurate. Now, I think in practice, more often than not, if you look close enough, one of them will come out ahead of the other, but the point still stands. So.
Well, if we're going on the rules of logic, one of them has to, and I would say that you're missing something. If you have two opposing views, something is missing from the universe. You don't have enough details.
Right. Yeah,
Like,
I think that is fair, because in the end, art is created by flawed humans, so it will have flaws, and art isn't... A book is not that big. A book is not that much information when you think about it. Like, there's only a limited amount of information and a limited amount of data to draw from. So I agree, there will be missing stuff, and it might not be possible to find the correct interpretation. I agree.
All right. Well,
All right.
I think we've made. You know what? This is a commemorative moment. We came to a conclusion. The author is dead, and we have killed him.
I would actually say maybe the author isn't dead, but the author has amnesia. I think it might be a better way to put it. The author doesn't necessarily know what they made, but they did make it.
That's true. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place to stop. So thank you so much for listening. If we are the authors of this YouTube channel and you're interpreting what we're saying, the correct interpretation is to leave a like and a comment and subscribe. But if you disagree that is the correct interpretation and you have a different one, leave a comment explaining what it is.
And then like the video, so that way, it becomes more popular. More people get to see your comment.
Yeah, exactly. So, see, when you like the video and you comment, you're really liking your own why am I... Just do the YouTuber stuff, okay? Please and thank you. Have a great rest of the week, and we will see you next week.